Leafs go 2 for 2 on the weekend, and the trade scene was wild around the NHL. The East has become a gauntlet. Was it all mean for Toronto? All that more coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the February 27th edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast. It's your one-stop shop for all things Leafs. I'm your host, Mike DiStefano from TSN 1050 Toronto Radio, also known as Al's brother on TSN's Overdrive and TSN 1050's Toronto Radio and Leafs Lunch, that is. Joining me, it's my co-host, Dave Morassutti from Sportsnet, also a writer for the NHLPA. Locked On Leafs is a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast. Be sure to subscribe for free wherever you get your podcast from. We're also up on YouTube, so check us out if you haven't already. It's Locked On Leafs on YouTube. Hit subscribe. We've got new videos coming out to you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. You can hit the little notification bell to know exactly when new episodes get dropped. Man, it was a crazy weekend in the NHL, Dave. We had the Leafs go 2 for 2, a couple of victories against Minnesota and Seattle. We'll get to that in a moment. We had a goalie goal around the NHL. And did they move up the NHL trade deadline to midnight Sunday night? Like, am I missing something? Sunday was a wild one in terms of trades around the NHL. Many of the big names getting dealt and coming into the Eastern Conference. We'll talk about how that impacts and might affect things for Toronto the rest of this week. We'll get to that momentarily, but let's start out with what we made of the games for Toronto this weekend. A 2-1 overtime victory over the Minnesota Wild, and then a 5-1 win over the Seattle Kraken. What'd you make of those two games, Dave?
Yeah, kind of two very different games for the Leafs, right? The Friday game was kind of I called it the snooze fest. And it was what I was expecting against Minnesota. They just don't allow a lot. But, I mean, what an incredible finish by William Nylander there. And then you go to Seattle, and it's like total opposite, just absolute domination after allowing the first goal of the game. So it was, with everything going on, it's just kind of like the hockey kind of felt a little secondary, but it was like it's a pretty tidy weekend for the Leafs.
Yeah, I mean, you had to do it. In Tampa, they got just their butts kicked by Pittsburgh too Sunday. So it allowed Toronto now, like, you wake up in the morning here and they're up, in terms of points percentage and points in general. They're up 4 points with only one extra game played now. So they are in second place comfortably. So that is good to see. But yeah, like you mentioned it, I think what I really gleaned from this game we just witnessed in Seattle in particular, obviously, is, they ended up shaking up the top six. Nylander slide down, and he gets an opportunity to roll with Tavares and O'Reilly. And then Austin Matthews gets his boy Mitch Marner back in that top line. They got right back to work. I mean, they factored in on a couple of goals. I think, 3 assists for Mitch Marner, 2 goals for Austin Matthews. I mean, what'd you think of them getting reunited?
Well, I mean, it worked. That's the good thing.
Absolutely.
I didn't mind it. I felt like, you know what, it was kind of being talked about a little bit, like Austin Matthews hasn't looked Austin Matthews-like. And look, William Nylander's been no problem. Michael Bunting's been doing well. Matthews has put up points. It's not like he's taking a back seat. He's just not doing what we expect Austin Matthews to do, and that is put the puck in the net. So it was nice to see that for one night you can put Mitch Marner on that line, and yeah, Austin Matthews looks like Austin Matthews. And obviously Mitch Marner continues to look pretty great, coming off the 5-point performance in Buffalo. He gets 3 in Seattle. He just loves playing on the road now.
Well, he does. I think he's got something like 16 games in a row with a point on the road. Like, he had that home record that he beat earlier this year, and now he's got a home record that he's or a road record that he's trying to beat now too. So he's been amazing. Like, is Mitch Marner, like, is he a better player than Austin Matthews? No. Is he having a better season than Austin Matthews? Absolutely he is. Like, Mitch Marner has been this team's best player from pillar to post this year. He's the team's MVP. And the way that he's elevated his game even in the last like few weeks here, he seems to be playing on a completely like a whole another level right now. Where we saw the brilliance in Buffalo, as you mentioned, 5 assists. And then even tonight, like you look at the Liljegren goal, that was just a smart hockey play, right? They go and they win a puck battle, him and Bunting in behind the goal, and then he just waits for Liljegren to get in position and then kind of puts the puck past the stick of the goaltender, and it turns out to be a goal, right? So and then the one on the second goal by Matthews, like it seems like every single night he's making a spectacular pass that's leading to goals.
Yeah, no, exactly. And just what I'm looking forward to seeing now until the end of the season is how much tinkering are we going to see? Like I know for a fact that the top 2 lines for the Leafs are going to score, no problem. It's now what's the carryover effect if the Leafs decide they want to make more changes to see if they can get other lines going? Because like just what I like to see from this game was, yeah, you throw Marner up there, Matthews can get 2 goals against a Seattle team that's been pretty good. Like this isn't like a team that he didn't just feast on a a bottom feeding team. This was a team that's in the playoff race, in a playoff position right now. So that's kind of what I like to see. I'm just curious to see how much more tinkering will we see from now until the end of the season.
Oh, I'm sure we will. Like I'm guaranteeing that we will. Like I remember listening a couple. I don't know if it was Thursday, maybe last week, or maybe it was even after the Buffalo game. They had asked Sheldon Keefe, "Hey, like how many different lineup iterations do you have in your head?" And he's like, "A lot." And we could try and get some of these done as much as possible before it's go time. Like I would imagine the last like 2 weeks he'll try and settle things in and get an actual look at what he wants his playoff roster to look like. But we saw it, he's not afraid. Okay, well, let's make this flip and let's see how that works with Willie working off with those two, with Tavares and with Ryan O'Reilly. At some point, we still do expect to see Ryan O'Reilly in the 3C hole and Tom Tavares back into the middle. Then how do they make those lineups look? So there still is, some things that we expect to see at some point here for Sheldon Keefe, but it's good to know that you can do both because you had some production with both those lines tonight, and you've had production with them, when it was Nylander with Tavares or Nylander with Matthews and with Michael Bunting. So, you can get really any which way you want it. It seems like these 6 players that they have in their top 6 are just very good, and you can play with whoever they want, and they'll still be able to score and provide some offense here. Samsonov had a good weekend too. I want to get some love to Samsonov because obviously he had to stand on his head against Minnesota on Friday and only allowed the 1 goal there, and then went on the road where he hasn't really been sharp on the road. He's been like a sub 900 save percentage goalie on the road this year. His home road splits are weird to look at, but had a great night in Seattle, and he had to be, right? Seattle had a couple of good looks. I think I saw they had like 18 slot shots. So he had to be on top of his game tonight, and for sure he was pretty early and often too. Just allowed the 1 goal to Eberle, and then outside of that, it was pretty solid.
Yeah, he had to make some really tough saves against Seattle. Like Minnesota, we know like it could have been a very different story if that first shot of the game actually went in, where they shot it from like center ice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's like still gonna be nervous moments with Samsonov, but he's in these games, you're seeing him make some of these saves that are just like, okay, like he's in a bit of a groove here. Yeah, I thought that game in Seattle could have been very different if he didn't make some of the saves he made, but I also thought the Leafs played much better in front of him, the last couple games that they did in Buffalo, which obviously, still a win, but also one that didn't look too highly on Samsonov. So it's nice to see that he kind of bounced back with back-to-back 1 goal allowed performances, because they're going to need him to, because we're not I know Matt Murray is expected to be activated soon, but this is still going to be Samsonov's net until the wheels come off, which knock on wood, hopefully it does not happen.
I don't think it's gonna happen. Like, I've been pleasantly surprised with Samsonov. I wouldn't say pleasantly surprised. I was optimistic that he could be this goaltender. Like, you look at his track record throughout his career. Like, you got to be a solid prospect to be taking the first round as a goaltender. There has to be belief in your game, and there clearly was that. And then things just kind of went awry. Like, he started out his career really good as a 22-year-old in Washington system, 21, 22, and then things kind of started to spiral. And now he's in Toronto in a much better situation. He's working with the goalie department now, led by Curtis Sanford, and they seem to be getting some really good things out of him, right? They're getting some stuff out of his game. They're helping him track pucks. I heard on the broadcast today that's been a really big, strong point of emphasis for Curtis Sanford, working with Samsonov, getting him to track pucks. And that was something that was really evident tonight, going from side to side, out there challenging the opposition. So Sammy, for me, I think he certainly is proven that he could be this team's number one goaltender down the stretch and number one goalie in the playoffs, someone who you can trust can go out there and give you a solid performance. I just want to see it happen on a more consistent base on the road. Like, we know the home starts have been stellar. The road starts have been very inconsistent. Tonight was a good one, but now they're out on this road trip. We'll see what else he can do throughout these next couple of games against some solid squads. Like, you got to go into the Battle of Alberta. You're going into Calgary, into Edmonton, Vancouver. We'll see what happens there. But, there's going to be some tough teams, quality opponents that he's going to have to play well against in order for Toronto to get the full 2 points. I think lastly, before we wrap up this Leafs segment here, before we get to what's going on around the league with all this trade movement, we should note too, Mark Giordano, new record holder, all-time shot blocking record at 2,045 blocked shots. We'll note that this stat has only been traced since the 05-06 season, which I believe is like Gio's rookie year too, if I'm not mistaken. So if not, he may be 06-07. But I believe he broke in the league in the mid-2000s. So I believe probably since his career started, he's been able to track those, and he just passed Chris Russell on the all-time list. So congrats to Mark Giordano, and he's been a beast for this team, and sweetheart deal, buddy, sweetheart contract at that. All right, we had a number of trades go down in the NHL Sunday night. Timo Meyer is heading east. Tanner Jeannot is heading east. We already saw a couple of other guys beef up their teams, and it sounds like Patrick Kane is close to coming to the Big Apple as well. So what does that mean for the Maple Leafs going forward? Do they need to make another addition? We'll discuss all this and more on the other side. But first, Dave, how about a word from one of our show sponsors?
Yes, and that is a product that I use every day, and it is Athletic Greens, which we have a new overlay for. If you're watching on YouTube, you get to see a nice little pretty Athletic Greens overlay. So what is Athletic Greens? Well, I actually just got my brand new shipment of Athletic Greens because it is something, as I said, that I use every day. It's one delicious scoop into a cup of water. Usually, actually, Athletic Greens, if you get the pack with Athletic Greens, they give you a bottle that measures it all out for you. And you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things that I listed. I'm somebody that, likes simplicity in my life. I want to have something that I can take in the morning, usually before breakfast. First thing I can do, take this, and it helps get me start my day off right. And as I mentioned, yes, I actually just bought a brand new package subscription of Athletic Greens. It costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. It's cheaper than getting all the different supplements yourself. You're investing in an all-in-one nutritional insurance. It's also lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It also contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, while still tasting good. It supports better sleep quality and recovery, supports mental clarity and alertness. It's one thing with the best things. Athletic Greens uses the best of the best products based on the latest science with constant product iteration and third-party testing. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional instrument.
Welcome back to the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti with you. Man, Dave, was Sunday a busy day. Holy cow. We had trades right from when I woke up this morning. I'm looking on my phone and see a whole bunch of deals go down all the way through to about, 5 minutes before we started to record. The Tanner Jeannot trade comes through. So why don't we start there, since that is the freshest and probably closest to home type of trade that we saw happen today, because Tanner Jeannot is Tampa bound. The Tampa Bay Lightning weren't sure what they were going to do. Everyone said they don't really have many picks and prospects to land a big fish. We didn't really land a big fish. They landed Tanner Jeannot, who, granted, did score 24 goals last year and was one of the runner-ups, I believe, or was in conversation at least for the Calder Trophy. Did not get as many votes as Michael Bunting did, I might add. He didn't. He did not. Just saying. But we did see him go to the Tampa Bay Lightning for what Frank Saravalli is now describing a jaws on the floor type of return, is apparently what other general managers around the NHL are saying about the deal. They gave up a first-round pick, a second-round pick, a third-round pick, a fourth-round pick, a fifth-round pick, and defenseman Cal Foote,
Who was a first-round pick in 2017.
who was also a first-round pick, and a pretty good, bottom, third pair defenseman who's got some size to him. This is a massive, massive haul to get Tanner Jeannot, who has 5 goals on the year, Dave. 5 goals on the year. Can you think of a trade that is more all in than this one right here? Because, boy, is this ever a haul to give up for that guy.
Yeah, I just remember when people were saying, "Oh, Tanner Jeannot is, he's being scratched for trade-related reasons," and people in the Discord is like, "Oh, would love to see him on the Leafs."
Not at that price. Not at that price.
No, you like that's like, what would the equivalent be? Okay, picks aside, I mean, obviously the Leafs have a few more picks to offer than Tampa, because Tampa has traded almost every single pick that they've owned. Which I understand, because they were winning cups instead of making draft picks. But what would be the equivalent of a Cal Foote for the Leafs?
Cal Foote for the Leafs would probably be, oh geez. I mean, would you put him in obviously for defensemen, but in terms of value, like Nick Robertson?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's tough to say, because Cal Foote, his role's kind of defined, but maybe that's just because that's how he's been casted in Tampa.
I mean, would you Cal Foote is kind of what Liljegren was a year ago.
Yeah.
At the start of the season, maybe.
Yeah, I would say.
Now Liljegren is definitely a much better prospect, but think about where he was last year or at the beginning of the season before he elevated into what he's become. That might be a good Leafs equivalent for what Cal Foote is. So imagine giving up a first, second, third, fourth, and fifth round picks stretching across 3 different drafts, plus a Timothy Liljegren-esque player.
Yeah.
Insane.
I understand the qualities that Tanner Jeannot brings, and it's not going to be fun to play against Tanner Jeannot in the playoffs.
No.
I truly understand that. But this is somebody who last year I was actually just about to pull up the stat.
19% shooting percentage. Is that what you're about to say?
That was the one I was going to go for. Every time a player goes off for 1 year and then comes down to earth, I look at the shooting percentage. Granted, Tampa's a better team and is probably going to get Tanner Jeannot and better chances offensively to score. But are we gonna see him go back to shooting at a 90% rate? I doubt it. On top of that, and the other thing that somebody was mentioning about Tanner Jeannot was this guy loves to take penalties.
Yeah.
Now, a friend of mine saying, well, in the playoffs, that's not going to be a problem against the Leafs because, Tampa never gets called for a penalty against the Leafs, usually the other way around. Kind of chuckled at that one. But, yeah, I mean, the only worry here is the style of play of Tanner Jeannot. But considering what Tampa gave up, and this is their all-in move, I'm not as concerned because this was Tampa's big swing ahead of the deadline. They really didn't do anything. They're not really going to be able to do much else. I'm going to probably regret saying that.
You are going to regret saying that, man, because every year they do this. Like 2 years ago, or was it 3 years ago now, they brought in Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow, who at times were like third-line players. And it's like, okay, you give up first-round picks to do that. Give up a first-round pick for a third-pair defenseman in David Savard. You have 2 first-round picks last year for Brandon Hagel. And now this year they're giving up a first, second, third, fourth, fifth plus Cal Foote to bring in Tanner Jeannot. But guess what, Dave? They have 2 Stanley Cups. And it's like those pieces factored into those Stanley Cups. Like, the thing with this team is they're built so well top heavy that if they can bring in somebody in their bottom 6 or middle 6 maybe even, we'll see where Jeannot ends up playing, who can play that heavy style of game, make it difficult on the opposition, which in round 1, it's going to be Toronto. We already know it's going to be Toronto. And make them like fear to play you, make it hard to go into the corner, to battle, to go get pucks, going to make people make business-like decisions. We've seen players make business decisions in the playoffs on the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's what people do when they go into a corner also with Tanner Jeannot. That's a big move, but if you can get those guys to factor in, which we've seen last year happen with that team. Remember how impactful Nick Paul was in that playoff series. We could see him have that type of impact within this series. And for me, that is a little bit scary. Like, you're looking at that team. They got better today. They got deeper today up front, right? Like, they gave up draft picks and then Cal Foote. Again, like third pair guy. Maybe now they can even go and get a Luke Shen to replace that still. And then all of a sudden, you didn't really take anyone out. You added a really difficult player to play against, a pain in the ass like Tanner Jeannot. They got better. They did get better today. So from a Leafs perspective, you are looking at that and you're thinking, okay, now we've seen Boston make a move by bringing in Orlov. We've now seen Tampa make a move by bringing in Tanner Jeannot. We believe that Patrick Kane is going to be in New York, and we saw Timo Meyer end up in New Jersey. We'll get to those deals in a moment. If you are Kyle Dubas and you're Toronto, do you look at that and say, I got to do something else this week? Ryan O'Reilly and Achari, it just simply isn't enough. We do need to make one more impact move and preferably on the blue line.
I actually think maybe 2 potential moves here.
Okay.
Now, priority number 1 will be the blue line. I think they do need to address that. Now that you're going up against teams that are going to try to forecheck the living bejesus out of you in Tampa and potentially Boston, who also had a Garnet Hathaway, just because they weren't nasty enough. They just want more nastiness to them. But I do think they still need to look at shoring up the blue line, especially ones that can handle the forecheck a little bit better than I think some of the guys on the current roster right now. And I look at, we talk about how the top 6 has been performing. The bottom 6, specifically that third line, has not been very impressive in my opinion. And I'm wondering if something there needs to change, because if you're not going to get scoring from your bottom 6 in the playoffs, that's a recipe for disaster, because this happened quite often. When goals dry up, you need to find them in other ways.
So what do you want? What do you want? Another goal scorer there to move like Engvall down?
I want someone that's going to provide, that's going to go to those hard areas on the third line to score goals. Like, we saw David Kampf score that goal against Minnesota, but then forget there was William Nylander passing him the puck. But like those are the sort of plays that third line needs to do. They're not really doing it themselves. They need to find someone, whether it's somebody that's going to set up those guys for those plays, so maybe more of a playmaker style, or someone that's going to go to those areas more often for those goals.
Yeah, and that's where you get into the situation where I think we'll see Ryan O'Reilly end up getting a look at 3C, so they can look at and see if they can make a 3-line top 9 effective lineup. So I think we will get a chance to see that prior to Friday before the deadline. Maybe we'll see it in one of these games up against Calgary or Edmonton before the deadline. But I agree that you would like to see a little bit more. It's only been like 5 games though, so we can give it a little bit of time. That said, I also think that line is more of a shutdown checking line. So they'll be spending a lot of their time in the defensive zone anyway. But to your point, if they can add a goal or two here to help, and Engvall's track record hasn't been great in the playoffs. I think it's been pointed out very well. He's got 0 goals in 18 playoff games. Perhaps you do want a little bit more of an upgrade there. You could do that, but if it comes at the expense of not getting that true upgrade on the blue line, I think I'd rather roll the dice with the forward group that they currently have and really make sure that I go and get that impact defender and not have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's why I said the defender has to be the top priority.
Yeah,
because that's more of a glaring need. The bottom 6 forward is more of like a luxury add than anything else.
Yeah. All right. We're on the same page, I believe. Let's talk about some of these other big trades that went down. We said Timo Meyer. He's now a New Jersey Devil. It seems like Patrick Kane is close to being a New York Ranger. Barbashev was dealt, and it wasn't to Toronto either. So he's out of the equation for the Maple Leafs for this upcoming week. We'll tell you about those deals and maybe who is still out there for Toronto. We'll get to that on the other side. But first, let me tell you guys about one of today's show sponsors, and that's Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know that my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this season. And if you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but you don't want to compromise taste, then man, we've got just the thing for you. You've got to try Built. With Built, it's healthy. It actually tastes really good. They're seriously so delicious. You won't think that they're good for you. It's perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good, for starters, are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right. It's real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors. You can get churro, my personal favorite, peanut butter brownie, also a coconut almond, so many more flavors available. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars honestly taste like a candy bar while maintaining the amazing macros. What's even better is they're healthy, only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to go around, you don't need to wait to go and get your box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or even the coconut puffs. So if you're close to one of them, you can run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors like brownie, batter, churro, and you can thank me later. So just a reminder, Built Bar is a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. You can go to Built.com, use that promo code LOCK15, and you'll get 15% off your next order. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano and Dave Morassutti. All right, buddy, let's go around the trading mill because we had a whole bunch of deals that went down today. Let's start with the one the one that has the biggest starometer impact to it, and that's Timo Meyer going from the San Jose Sharks to the New Jersey Devils. And this trade in particular had a lot of people scratching their heads because, I don't know about you. I thought that the Devils kind of got a steal here. They didn't give up a whole lot to bring in Timo Meyer, who is an RFA, and they have control of this player next season.
that was the part that, the fact that they didn't give up really much. They didn't give up anything from their current roster to bring them in. The picks had the conditions on them.
Zetterlund's on their current roster.
Yeah, but he's not like a big part. I'm talking about like when you're looking at the impact Timo Meyer is going to have on this team.
Well, yes.
What he gave up, including like the picks and stuff. Like I don't know what, like the Sharks held out for that, and the fact that like they weren't really on the clock to move him at the trade deadline felt like there was something off about this, or they really like all the prospects that they're getting back, because I don't see the value here for San Jose.
All right, so because I'm a half decent show host, I right away texted our boy Tony Ferrari, and I said wanted to get his raw thoughts immediately on the trade. So I asked him his thoughts on the prospect, because I'm not the prospects guy. That's Tony. That's what he does. So I go to the professionals to get their information, and this is what Tony texted me saying. I asked him his thoughts on the deal. He was like, I'm not a big Shakir guy. He's a big toolsy D man, but still has a long way to go. Okotok is a guy, decent depth third pair type of player. Zetterlund, good rookie, but he's a little streaky. 23 years old though, so he's got to figure it out pretty soon. And then of course Andreas Janssen went the other way, former Maple Leaf. He was just a cap dump. But hey, along with myself, shocked that Alexander Holtz did not have to be included in the deal to get it done. So the fact that they were able to make this trade without trading away their top three prospects was considered a win. They did give up a first-round pick, and there's also a conditional second-round pick that could turn into another first if they do make it to the Eastern Conference Final. So if that happens, okay, you've given up 2 first-round picks plus a couple of decent prospects. But overall, now, especially when you look at the Tanner, what Nashville got for Tanner Jeannot, I'm absolutely flabbergasted that Timo Meyer went for so cheap, actually, all things considered.
Yeah, how many other teams are probably just like, we could have given you way more than that.
Well, so what could Toronto have given, right? Like, maybe they didn't have the picks, I suppose. Like, that's the one thing I think the holdup. But in terms of the prospects that they gave up, Toronto easily could have given up those level of prospects. Like Zetterlund, you could probably say Zetterlund's close to, Nick Robertson at this point. You can look at Makhmadulin is probably close to a Topi Niemelä, Akhtiav, or whatever that other guy's defenseman's name is. Is he like, I don't know, Will Villanove or a Philip Kral? Like these are the level of players we're talking about that the Sharks got in return. Like they're not star A, they're not even B plus level. Makhmadulin, I'll give him a B plus level prospect, but like that's the best they got in terms of prospects.
They didn't get like a Matthew Nyes return.
Oh God, no, did not get a Matthew.
Like Matthew Nyes and deals like this for the Leafs for Timo Meyer.
Would I have given him up?
Like, no, how many people were saying that? How many people were saying
lots
would need to be included in the deal?
Lots. And you know what? I'm sure the interesting thing is the Devils did not give teams permission to talk to Timo Meyer. I don't know why. Because to me, if you give permission for teams to, like, if you're trading him and you give him permission, then you can probably get a larger return if they're trading for a guy who they already have an 8-year extension in place for. Now you could probably get yourself an Alexander Holtz, or you could get yourself a Matthew Nyes if they're to do a deal with Toronto. But if you're not allowing them to do that and you're just trading him, knowing that there's that big time, $10 million qualifier, plus if maybe he only takes the qualifier, he's only there for 1 more year. And if that's the case and he takes off on you, maybe you don't want to give up all those future pieces. But if you do have that extension in place, it's a little bit more appetizing to give up a Holtz or an Nyes or who's the other Hughes brother, Luke Hughes, maybe even, or Simo Nemec, the other defenseman, top defensive player that they have in that system. So I don't know. I thought that it was a tad underwhelming for Timo Meyer. But I guess no one else was willing to pay up.
Was also retained in this deal. Half of his salary was retained.
Yeah, but I think his AAV is only like 5 for $6 million. $6 million, I think, right?
In at $3 million. Well, the Devils kind of needed the room.
Well, yeah, they did need it. Well, no, because then they gave up Andreas Janssen, who makes $3.4 million.
That's true.
So I think the Devils actually created more cap space by making this deal than than not. Like, they made this trade and have more cap space.
That's true. Because I'm looking at their LTIR. Yeah, they're not really, because Jonathan Bernier is on there. They're barely using it too. So
Yeah,
it's a great move for the Devils because you're looking at the Rangers, who are close to adding Patrick Kane. The Hurricanes are the team to beat right now in the Metro Division.
and they're gonna do something. They got to do something, right?
Yeah, I think the thing is now is like what, like, there isn't much left to be done. Like, if you're looking at what Carolina, all these other teams now that probably were waiting for some of these big to see what they could get, there isn't much really out there. Like, somebody was asking on the Discord, like, what can the Leafs do now? There isn't a whole heck of a lot that the Leafs can really do because some of the bigger pieces have gone and they went for prices that, frankly, the Leafs decided they're going to pay for Ryan O'Reilly and Noel Acciari.
So I'm just taking a look now at the updated trade bait board, actually, by TSN. And now the number one player is Patrick Kane. But Patrick Kane, we're expecting to trade it to the New York Islanders. Just way too many roster-related moves have been made by New York that literally just are connecting the dots, that they're creating the space necessary to go out and get themselves Patrick Kane. And we know that he wants to go there too. So that's going to happen. But he's number one. But he's off the board, I think, for Toronto. Jacob Chikrin, I suppose he's still out there and available, technically. You know, he's a guy they could go and get. And then you get to the players like Jake McCabe. Jake McCabe is a guy who was rumored to go to Toronto prior to the O'Reilly deal. Maybe he can still come to Toronto, especially if the Hawks are willing to retain on that contract. All of a sudden, you're bringing in a $2 million player for someone who can play in your top four. It can play a bit of a physical style of game. Gavrikov is another guy who's available. Do they bring in a Luke Shen? Outside of that, you're getting into Carson Soucy territory. If we're talking about blue liners, Nick Jensen's a name that I like, and he's someone who was brought to my attention. Frank Corrado is he's been a big Jensen guy. He said him back in like November. And then once we saw the Orlov news, he's like, hey, Nick Jensen, there's a guy. If they're available and he's a pending UFA, maybe they go after a Nick Jensen. He would be someone who you could put up in your top four, and he just plays, a sound defensive game. So he would probably be a guy who, I don't know, does he go up to the top of my trade bait board? Maybe he does, or my trade target board. He might. You know what was another interesting name that got brought up in the broadcast today, which I didn't think about? I think Elliot may have brought him up. Radko Gudas.
Yeah, I saw his name. I don't know if it was in the Discord that somebody brought him up or it was saw it on Twitter.
I think, because Elliot brought it up in one of the intermissions.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's a pending UFA and probably doesn't want to stay in Florida, apparently. So they might try and look to move him. I think it's the thought process there. Like, that's the type of burly physical defenseman that the Leafs have kind of needed for a while.
Yeah. Like, I also listened to Mike Kelly on the Leafs broadcast talk about what makes Nick Jensen such a, an underrated defenseman, and that when you're a team that struggles to defend against the dump and chase, which is something the Leafs aren't as good about, certain defensemen aren't, Nick Jensen is like among the best at retrieving those pucks and getting them out. Like, he, percentage-wise, he's at the tops in the league. He's like on the level of Drew Doughty and Alex Pietrangelo, which you don't need Nick Jensen to be an offensive like a big offensive guy. You don't need that. You need a guy that in his own end can get those pucks out, because Tampa is going to want to keep you in your own end.
Yeah,
so
pretty much.
And I know Elliot said that they're going to try. Washington's going to try to sign a few of these guys, and whoever they can't figure out in terms of contract will be probably shipped out. So if Nick Jensen's there, that would work. Gavrikov, kind of in the similar boat, right? I think Columbus is now wondering, we've held this guy out for so long. the number of teams now that I think Edmonton could go after them. I think there's still a few teams that will potentially go after them. But the good thing about the Leafs is you're seeing some of these contenders now make it known the moves they're making, and if the Leafs still feel like they have bullets in the chamber, they can go out and get some things done right now.
It looks like there's another trade breaking. The Predators have acquired Isaac Ratcliffe from Philadelphia for future considerations. Pretty sure he's a former first-round pick, actually, of Philly.
Who was pretty much in first-round territory, I think, when he was picked.
I think pretty sure in the Matthews draft, I think he was their first-round pick that year. And now he was traded for future considerations. That's not great. Not bueno. Definitely not for
35th overall pick, so second round.
Okay, second round. Yeah. Was that in the Matthews draft, though?
Year after, 27.
Oh, okay. I have no idea what I'm talking about then, clearly. I just remember him being picked, at the top of the draft pretty early on. But yeah, crazy Sunday in terms of trades around the NHL, and it's still coming through now. Deals all the way late till it's 11:30 Sunday right now, so craziness. But still an opportunity for the Maple Leafs to get in on the trade market. I guess there's not even a week left till the trade deadline. There's 5 days left until the deadline. Friday, 3 p.m. We'll see if Kyle Dubas has one more trick up his sleeve, one more deal to make to try and make sure that he doubles down and gives the Maple Leafs the biggest and best chance to not only make it out of the first round for the first time in 18 years, but also go on a Stanley Cup run. Because that's what this year is all about. It's not just winning a round. It's about trying to win a Stanley Cup. And I think they're, with what we've seen happen over the course of the last week in the Eastern Conference, boy, you might need to make one more sizable move to make that happen. What do you think?
It might, with the way that things are going and the way that, the race in the East is going, you may have to consider loading up just a little bit more to give yourself that last bit, the best chance possible.
Empty the cupboard, Kyle. Empty the cupboard. Tampa's doing it. Match them. Get her done. All right. That'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcasts and platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Go ahead, leave a like, a thumbs up, and comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. That'd be greatly appreciated. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow. We'll see if we get any more trades on Monday to break down. Maybe we'll do a little cosine, no sign tomorrow as well. That could be fun. And we got Battle of Alberta coming up next on the Maple Leafs sked as well. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.